love story with Ruby and Rails. Second would be we'll see how Ruby on Rails work in motion. We'll try to build a very small application with it. I'll try to give you the details about when we create it, how simple is it, and why is it called a developer friendly language. So I'll be talking about that. And third would be I'll pass on the study material.
Welcome everyone. Hope you're keeping well and staying safe. This is Hafsanjum and I am working as a community executive at Recro, wherein we are working towards building an exclusive community for developers to help you get connected with like-minded people, build your network and grow professionally. So those who don't know about what Recro is, it is a developer-focused platform helping developers to meet the right opportunity by connecting them with fast-growing startups such as CureFit, Udance, Wiki, Dunzo, etc. So welcome to Recro Talks again. And today we are doing a webinar on Is Ruby on Rails Dead? So our guest speaker for today is Ayush Billore, and he's a senior software engineer at Progress Chef. And he has an experience of 5+ years in web development. Currently, he's building DevOps and DevOps tools with Chef.io. Thank you so much, Ayush, for joining us. You may go ahead and say hi to the audience.
Hey, everyone. It's nice talking to you on Saturday Eve, and thank you, Hafsa, for conducting this session. I've gone through multiple sessions with Recro, and you are doing a really good job connecting the developers with the right sort of employers. So you're building a really healthy community. I'm happy to be part of this.
We're very happy to have a speaker like you, Ayush, and I'm pretty sure that our audience today is really excited to know about what the topic is about, and obviously with the response that we are getting, we are so and I'm pretty sure that they are intrigued about the topic and looking forward for the discussions. Okay, guys. So before we start the webinar, there are a few announcements that I would love to make. And for those who are joining us live, please feel free to comment your queries and questions in the live chat so that I'll take up the questions and bring that in front of the speaker. And you can post your questions in the question section. We will take them up in the last 15 minutes of the session or along with the parallel to the presentation. So that's for the people who are joining us from Zoom. And we'll be rolling out polls or questions in between. So please do answer them and keep your notepad handy. And whatever you're learning from today's session, we would love to see your post and your learnings on your LinkedIn profile. So do not forget to tag Recro, tag Ayush, and tag me, and we'll be good to go. So yeah, Ayush, I think we can get started.
Awesome, sure. I'll be sharing my screen quickly. So let me know if it's good.
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Yeah. Sure. People joining us, let us know if you're able to see the presentation clearly or not.
Yeah.
A quick response would be so much appreciated. Yeah.
Sure, I'll get started. So the topic for today is Ruby on Rails dead? So it's a bit controversial topic, and people are talking about it from almost 6 to 7 years, and it's always in the news. So whenever we go on Reddit, we go on LinkedIn, people keep on posting one way or the other. So suppose if someone is appreciating the framework or the language, there would be a comment saying, "Oh, is it still alive?" And or if someone is cribbing about the language, someone would come, "Oh, I can still scale this framework to a larger extent, and I'm still enjoying working with that." So there are two set of very different set of audience, and this war is continuously going on. So now I took a very controversial topic, but let's see if we can do a justice to this. And also, I would like to put a disclaimer that whatever information that I'll be providing you here, I've gone through multiple blogs and I've watched multiple videos on YouTube. I talked to many people who work with me currently or my previous ex-colleagues. So this is how I've gathered the information regarding that. So if you think that I've made a mistake, please reach out to me or put it in comments, or let's try to fix it. Let's try to spread the right information. So that would be the idea for today's session. I'll move to the first slide. and let's see if that works. So the question for today is Ruby on Rails dead? And from last 5 years of experience that I have, what I learned is whenever you have a question, you first go and ask the internet, and let's understand what the internet says. So for that, I'll also follow the same thing. And this is the language. This is the site that I've gone through. Is Ruby dead.com, and the answer is no. So sorry. So the internet is saying that okay, it's not dead yet. So next thing, when the internet says that okay, it's still alive, we do the next thing. We go and talk to our manager. We says that okay, I've researched on my own. Now I want an expert advice. What do you think? Is Ruby dead? So same thing I did. I went to my manager and asked them, is Ruby dead? And I got a very psychological answer, and which stuck with me for a longer time. And my manager said that anything that evolves does not die. So for example, if there's a problem, and if you're trying to solve it, you're trying to make progress and solve it, you'll survive that situation. So similarly with Ruby and Rails, they keep on building new versions, they keep on fixing the problems or the bugs that they face, and that's how they are surviving. Ruby is almost 25 years old, Rails is almost 15 plus years old, so they've survived a decade, more than a decade. So for me, they're doing pretty good. I'll move to the next slide. This would be the agenda for today. I've broke it down to 3 pieces. First is my love story. It could get a bit personal, so feel free to maybe it can be helpful for your love story also, so you can get some pieces out of it. That would be the first part, love story with Ruby and Rails. Second would be we'll see how Ruby on Rails work in motion. We'll try to build a very small application with it. I'll try to give you the details about when we create it, how simple is it, and why is it called a developer friendly language. So I'll be talking about that. And third would be I'll pass on the study material. So for example, if you're a college grad or if you're working with some other languages, but if you want to get hands-on experience on, or if you want to learn what Ruby is and what Rails is, I'll pass on the study material, and that should bring you up to speed. So as I mentioned about the relationship, let's break down the relationship phases also into 4 parts. First would be first meeting. You just see person, it could be love at first sight, or you like something, you like smile, you like the how ease of connection. So that could be the first thing. Second thing, once we get through that, second would be getting to know each other. We would try to create that spark in the second stage. Third would be becoming a couple. When we know the pros and cons, we become a couple. We try to know the families, the contributors, like who all are there in the part of that. And fourth would be commitment. Like once you're through these stages, you're saying that okay, I can make that commitment, I can be engaged to that person. So that would be the 4 stages of relationship. And this relationship is between me and the language and the framework, Ruby, Rails, and Ayush. We'll be talking about that. Let's start. First meeting. So whenever you go on a first date, you keep on boasting about what you are. And similarly, that's what Ruby would do. So when Ruby's trying to impress me, so I asked her, what are you, Ruby, and what are you, Rails? So Ruby gave a very cheeky answer, saying that I'm a dynamic open source programming language, and I'll give you simplicity and productivity. If you use me, you can build applications with you. I'll be very easy to understand, and you can build applications very nicely with me. And similarly, Rails answered that I am also an open source web application framework, and you can create web applications at very quickly. You can in 15 minutes your first version would be ready. So that's what Ruby and Rails are. So that's what their answer was. In the previous answer only, they've mentioned that we are explicitly open source. You can see our code, you can make changes to our code. So we are transparent. So we will not hide anything from you. So that's very important in a relationship, right? Like people being transparent. Developer friendly was again another statement that they've mentioned. So it's the snippet that you see, the code snippet that you see on the screen. It's a very small example, but it will give you the idea of how expressive the language is. So this is basically when you are on an interpreter and you want to exit it. So you can either write quit or exit, whichever way you like. You can still exit it. So it tells us how expressive the language is. You can use the word of your choice and you can still exit the interpreter. Whereas just to take the example of Python, you have to pass on this exit and the parenthesis, and that's how you exit from the interpreter. So just to give you the idea of how expressive the language is. Next is Ruby started boasting about who all uses it. So it started taking big names like GitHub, Airbnb, Shopify, Hulu. These are big giants created on the base of Ruby on Rails. So in the year 2010, when Ruby on Rails was its peak, it was at boom. Like all the startups that were getting created, they were picking Ruby on Rails to start their business. So that's when the startups got created, and they've become so big using this framework and language. We all know the talk. This is the talk of the town, right? Twitter and Elon Musk. Every day we open any news channel, any Facebook, any Instagram feed, we just see Elon Musk doing something or the other thing. And similarly, Twitter is again a talk of the town. Twitter got created on Ruby on Rails. That's again a very interesting fact. When they started, they built their application with Ruby on Rails. But later on, when the requirements changed, when they wanted to scale to a Twitter has become really big. So when they've reached a certain scale, they decided that okay, now we want to make a switch, and they moved to Scala from Rails. This slide gives you the perspective of how active the community is. So there are around 6,000 contributors to Rails framework, and you can see I've applied the filter of all time, and these 6,000 is big. So for example, if you take a example of a company, so generally 5 to 10 people make an application, or if you look for a bigger company or bigger application, there are around 200 to 300 people building that thing. But here, 6,000 people collaborating and building a framework, yeah, it is pretty active and it's pretty alive, because when 6,000 people are working on it, we can clearly say that it is alive. Ruby gems are something just like plugins. So in any of the application, when you have to, it's pre-written code or libraries, you can say. There are around 174,000 plugins or Ruby gems already available. And you can see the total downloads also. Like there are so many downloads which are being done for these gems. This I've got from the Stack Overflow survey, and it tells us what a Ruby on Rails, what does it feel like to become a Ruby on Rails developer, and how rewarding is it? So from the Ruby on Rails, from the Stack Overflow survey, this list was of highest paying framework. So Ruby stands second here. So a year before that, the average salary was 74,000 USD, but in 2022 it became 90,000. So it's clearly getting rewarding being a Ruby on Rails developer in this time. Ruby told me about all the meta details that it had. It told me about how many contributors it had, how much money can you make with me, what all big companies do we use. So it was trying to create that attraction, put out all the right points, and I got attracted, and that's how I'm moving to the next stage. And it is about getting to know it better. When I came here, now Ruby started telling me what all you can do with me. Like you can do scaffolding. So scaffolding is something when you are with Rails, you're creating an application, you can do scaffold and all the boilerplate code that is required. So for example, if you're working with a framework, you have to write a lot of things for configuring the application, for bootstrapping the server. But when you have Rails, you can just use this command and it will clear the boilerplate code for you. Next was metaprogramming. So it's again a very interesting or very important aspect of Ruby, so that you can create metaprogramming. So I'll define metaprogramming first, and then I'll tell you what is happening on the screen. So metaprogramming is simply put your code writing more code. That your code has the ability to write even more code. So on the left front, you see there is a class developer, and there are two methods written: coding frontend and coding backend. And the job of these methods are nothing but print a statement, print a string on the console. Similarly, these and they are later on in the here you can see these are just they are just printing it. So they are instantiating the object, instantiating the class, and then using those methods. Similarly, when you are doing metaprogramming, you can define these methods at the runtime. So imagine instead of just 2 methods, there are 15 methods. So you have to write 15 different methods, right? But on the right front, you can just see that these methods can be defined on the runtime. So when you start building applications with Ruby and Rails, you will start to understand how you can utilize these capabilities of Ruby and how you can utilize metaprogramming in day-to-day life. So that's about metaprogramming. Moving to the third slide here, it says, I told you about scaffolding and metaprogramming. Now I'll give you some very strong sharp knives. So I'll give you ability to perform like I'll perform monkey patching, and what it does, you can burn your hands, you can cut your hands with that. So these sharp knives give you extreme abilities to perform outperform things, and then if you'll not use them properly, you can cut your hands with the sharp knives. These are that's why they are called sharp knives. You can see there's a string class, and generally whenever you are working on a like programming language, you would expect that string dot, like any string dot upcase would return capital H, and or all the letters that are there in the capital letters. But here you see we can override this method, and we are just doing self dot reverse. So when we do hello dot upcase, it reverses the string. So these kind of abilities are provided by Ruby, that you can override the methods that are already there, and this is called monkey patching. Now we know sort of each other. Like Ruby knows that, okay, I'm capable to understand and go through the learning curve. I know that what sort of functionalities or capabilities Ruby has. Now we are becoming a couple. Now things are getting serious. So now we need to understand who created you. So that was the question that I asked Ruby, like when did you come into existence, who created you? So this is the creator of Ruby. You can see his name is Yukihiro Matsumoto. He started writing Ruby in 1993, and he made Ruby public in 1995. So I am also 95 born, so we are of same age, so our match can still work out properly. Next, you would find that, okay, this is a weird looking photo. We were talking about technology. Why do we have a car in between? Why are we talking about F1 races? So the third guy that you see here, that this guy's name is DHH. So he's a Formula One racer, and he rides these cars, and he wrote Rails also. So he's a super talented guy. He wrote Rails framework. So in 2005, he wrote this application, and he's again a racing driver also. Now, once Rails and Ruby told me about their fathers, they started telling me about what sort of principles that you have to believe in if you want to be together with us. So that was kind of interesting, because okay, now things are getting very serious. I'm talking about their parents, I'm understanding their families, and now there are some things that are getting enforced on me. So Ruby tells me that Rails tells me that you have to follow conventions over configuration. So when you start working with Rails, it tells you that there are a few conventions which are already in place, that a variable name should be starting with small letter. There should be underscore in between whenever. So for example, Ayush Bilore would be written Ayush underscore Bilore with all small letters. So those kind of conventions are already there. So if I follow these conventions, my life would be very easy, because I don't have to do configurations, because those configurations will be taken care of automatically. Otherwise, in other programming languages, you have to provide these configurations through YAML files or JSON files. But in Ruby, if we just follow the right conventions, the system works automatically properly. Next thing they mentioned me about MVC. So Rails is a MVC framework. What does MVC stands for? Models, views, and controllers. So there are many MVC frameworks, but Rails is also again another MVC framework. Models talk to database. If you see the diagram here, if a user, anything that we see on the screen or of the browser screen, that is view. So user sees the view, they interact with the view, and they can make some API calls to controller. We never touch the database or models directly. Controllers then talk to models and fetch the data for us, update the data for us. So those kind of functionalities are given to controller. So this is the paradigm that you need to follow when you're when you're building with Rails. And then again, this was another principle that we know of. Don't repeat yourself. Whenever you're working with Rails, it's often it's a good practice that you should write code only once and then use it at multiple places. We should not repeat yourself. So here, if you see, this is again another controller. So if anyone of the viewer is a Rails programmer, they might understand it pretty easily that in a controller, there is an index method and there is a others method written. And in both the methods, we are doing the same thing, post.unpublished. So we are fetching all the unpublished posts. And here also we are fetching all the unpublished posts. So what is exactly happening is, instead of doing that, we can create a scope or a method at the model level and then utilize that method in the controllers. So that way we'll be able to utilize, we'll be able to implement, don't repeat, dry, we can dry out our code by using this paradigm. Now while I was, when the Ruby on Rails was getting serious, I was also getting serious in the relationship. So when I saw all the positives, I saw some negatives also. And now we'll talk about what those negatives are. So while I was reading about it, I heard that Ruby on Rails doesn't scale. As I mentioned about Twitter, people keep on talking that Twitter moved from using Ruby to Scala because Ruby was not, or Ruby or Rails was not able to scale to that extent. Like, for example, 200 million users, it was not able to scale it. So yeah, I was worried about this. So but later on, Shopify came to my rescue, and they said that, okay, Ruby on Rails can still scale. So they, in the previous sale, they did 14,000 orders per minute, and they've did 51 lakh, like, what is this number, 15 lakh USD sales per minute. So this is the kind of scale that Shopify operates at, and they are written in Ruby and Rails. So basically, Shopify comes and answers that, okay, if you have the right sort of engineers and if you have the right sort of architecture, you can still scale. So that was Shopify's answer. Next red flag was popularity is declining, and this is not a emotional judgment. This is something that I got from the stats. So if you see this October's GitHub top programming languages graph, so in 2014, Ruby was on the 5th place. And this graph, the data is gathered by checking the language popularity. So if you see the JavaScript, so even in 2014, it was at the first place, and even in 2022, it is standing at the first place. But if you see Ruby, it was at the 5th, and currently it is at the 10th place. Similarly, another thing you can see is for PHP, the popularity is declining with time. So that's a red flag that I saw, that okay, the popularity is declining. Next red flag was less jobs for junior developers. So as Ruby on Rails is a mature framework, Ruby on Rails is there in the market from last 15 years. Now we need to understand, are there enough jobs for, so for example, if there is a college grad, the person needs to understand, if I get into this, if I pick up this technology, will I still have job in 5 years, or will I have a job when I pass out from my college? So this is, I found a little alarming. When I just to get it, I was reading a few blogs, and I understand that okay, the jobs are declining. But to get a clear-cut idea, I went to Indeed.com and I searched for junior Ruby on Rails developer. So number of jobs that I saw was 11, but when I searched for senior Ruby on Rails developer, the number of jobs were 425. So that's a clear indicator saying that whoever is hiring, they are expecting that the person should come up with experience, so that we don't have to train the person, we don't have to spend in training the person. So that's a pattern that I've observed. These were the 3 red flags that I've mentioned. Now that I've accepted, so I am working with Ruby on Rails for 5 years, I've accepted the red flags. We need to accept the person as a package, like whatever the positives the person is bringing in, whatever the negatives the person is bringing in, collectively, if it's a good match, we can still make progress. So I thought that I can still make it work. So I moved to the commitment phase. This is the 4th stage of relationship. What I got in last 5 years. So I got 360 degree of experience of software development. I worked on the backend, I worked with databases, I worked with front end, I worked with deployment. So when you create a Ruby on Rails application, you get to work across all the verticals. So that's a very important positive that I've experienced. I found it to be clearly rewarding. So if you are a good engineer, if you have good understanding about the basics of software programming, you can make a really good money. So when I started right out of college, I started building with Ruby on Rails. Since then, I have making around 10x of what I was making when I came right out of college. So the amount of money or the amount of salary that you can fetch working with Ruby on Rails could be really good, because number of developers is decreasing, the demand is still there. So with that, you can ask for more money. So that's why the technology is rewarding in that aspect. As promised in Ruby, so Ruby and Rails both released a new version of themselves. So Ruby released Ruby 3, and then Rails released Rails 7. So there are very important features that are added in these versions to tackle the problems that they were facing. So initially, it was told that they are not fast enough. So Matt, the father of Ruby, he made a promise that Ruby 3 will be 3x faster than the previous version of Ruby. And he delivered on that promise. So performance is getting improved. He worked on the parallelism and concurrency part. So now we can use fibers instead of threads and utilize them faster. There are rectors also. So rectors is a very interesting thing. So for example, whenever you're building an application with Ruby, it works with a GIL, like global lock is there. And that is basically if there is a resource is locking the thread, and the other thread has to be in queue to get access of that thread. But these rectors can bypass that GIL lock. So that's a good innovation that has come into picture. And then the types have come in. So the way TypeScript implement types currently in Ruby is dynamically typed language, right? So we don't have to pass int characters, those kind of data types we don't have to pass. But with Ruby 3, we can do that. We can utilize static analysis also. And Rails 7 also has brought in these kind of new features. So first is they've replaced, so we don't need, initially till Rails 6, we were needing NPM or node packages. But in Rails 7, import maps completely replaces that. So we won't be needing NPM packages in Rails. The encryption has come in at the database layer. So due to, so for example, some of the fields of the database, for example, if there's a user table, I don't want my email or my number to be visible or to be stored as a string. So you can encrypt that and store it in the database. So those come in by default with Rails. You just have to use an extra flag, and that does it for you. There is asynchronous querying has come into picture. For example, if you're making an API call and from there you are fetching more than 2-3 resources, you can do them asynchronously. So all those calls will go to database in a parallel way, and then they fetch it. And so that's why the performance will increase at the API level. Retry jobs can indefinitely be made. Initially, there was it can only be made to a certain extent. Like you can't make them indefinitely. But this time with Rails 7, you can do it. And Hotwire is one of the hottest feature of Rails 7. So initially, whatever you have to do, you can just transmit like HTML over the Hotwire, and it becomes really fast. So instead of using JavaScript, you can use Hotwire in Rails 7. So that's another very good feature. So till this point, we were talking about theory. Yeah, this is the last slide I missed, sorry. So as I'm making the commitment, I told you about the positives that Ruby and Rails committed to me, told us that we'll be improving in future, and they've delivered on that promise. And now it's my turn to give back to the community. So Ruby rewarded me with money. Ruby rewarded with me my knowledge and kept the promises. So this is Ayush giving back completing the cycle basically. So whatever I've learned in past 5 years, I'm trying to give it back to the community. I'm writing blogs regularly. I'm trying to speak at the conferences. The way we are talking today, it's my way to give back to the community, spread the awareness about Ruby and Rails. So this was the agenda for taking today's session. Now we'll go to implement an application. So till now we understood the basics and the theory about Ruby and Rails, how it came into existence, who created it, what sort of functionalities does it give. Now in this section, we'll try to create a very basic application. So I would want to set the right expectations that don't expect this application to do a lot. It won't be a social media platform or a CRM platform. It will be a very basic application. But the idea here is to just show you the power of Ruby, like how easily can you create that application, how easily you can bootstrap your server and start using it. So yeah, I will head towards the demo. Meanwhile, if Hafsa, we have any questions, we can clear them about the initial session.
So now that we're talking about the Ruby and Rails, right, and you have explained how old it is, and we do have a history for Ruby and Rails, and it was from the beginning of the Twitter, and now Twitter has like changing and everything with time. So one of the question was, So is it perfect to use for e-commerce as a website? Because nowadays e-commerce are booming, and if you see how how the remote work and the post-COVID era is going on, right? Everyone is
Mhm.
into e-commerce, and you've seen most of the apps and all the applications are towards the e-commerce business and everything. So
Mhm.
do you think Ruby and Rails is a good will that be helpful for developing some new apps or something that would meet the expectations of today's audience and developers?
Got it. Yeah, got the question. So, if you recall, I've given an example of Shopify using Ruby on Rails. So
Yeah,
Shopify, uh, as per my understanding, it is the biggest e-commerce platform that is out there.
yeah, yeah.
It bootstraps around 1 million websites all over the world, and these all are e-commerce platforms. So, for example, while I was researching for this presentation, I've gone through a blog, and they've mentioned that it is the best fit for e-commerce because, for example, what sort of things do you need in an e-commerce? You need a payment portal where your customers can make the payment. You would need a dashboard. You would need some notification services. So all these things that we have to create in an e-commerce platform, for most of these things, there are gems already present. So gems are basically libraries. So you can use those libraries to bootstrap your application properly and pretty fast.
Mhm.
So for example, if there's a startup who want to start with an e-commerce platform, being a startup, they need to create quickly. So Ruby on Rails allows you to create applications quickly, and it has all the features that are required. For example, even the security could be handled pretty well in Ruby on Rails. So I would think that it's a pretty good option to consider.
Yeah, yeah. And also when we talked about the jobs in Ruby and Rails, right? So now that we see a lot of people are moving towards a system design and all of that, so job obviously are available, but do you think is it that much include the demand where people can actually apply for Ruby and Rails has a JD in their job role or not, or if someone is like looking solely out for the Ruby on Rails, and do you think they're going to have a future, let's say two to like 3 to 5 years from now or something like that?
Okay. So as I mentioned very clearly that senior software roles has still have enough jobs. But when we talk about junior roles, so for example,
Mm-hmm.
someone is coming right out of college, they need to
Mm-hmm.
really know which companies are hiring the fresher or fresh grads right out of college on these kind of roles. So the problem that I face is that I've learned from through the blogs and videos is, so for example, if someone joins as a fresh grad and they started working on Ruby on Rails, so in US, they generally fetch around 50,000 to 16,000, 60,000 USD. So they get hired, they get trained for a year or so. And then when the company thinks that, okay, we have trained these guys and now we can actually reap the benefit out of training these guys. Ruby guys are so in demand that they look for a raise. So when they apply, when the
Mm-hmm.
recruiters reach out to them, they give you 2x or 3x of what they are currently making. So if they have a 60,000 USD offer, they will be given 120 offer and they would accept it. So the first company who has given all the time to teach and train that person, they've moved out and they are being utilized by other companies. So that's the thing. That's why the junior grads, people are not spending time in training these
Mm-hmm.
students or the like early candidates. But if you're a senior candidate, you still have jobs in India. There are so many companies hiring in India, and after the pandemic, the markets have opened up to abroad also. So, for example, companies
Mm-hmm.
like GitLab, companies like GitHub also, these companies are hiring remotely. And the amount of money that you can fetch from these companies cannot be matched by some other companies
That you're working in
that are
India.
working remotely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, do you think Ruby and Rails could be a language or something that one can have a self taught themselves, or do you need any expert on mentoring for that? So, can it be self learned, or
Yeah.
is it like difficult enough to have, or is it really mandatory to have someone who's well versed in it, like you said, some senior developers already working on something like that, or do you need to take some mentoring sessions or something for learning it as a developer?
Okay. So yeah, so for this we can break it down into two parts. First is learning Ruby and then learning Rails. Ruby is a language, Rails is a framework built on top of Ruby. So
Mhm.
Ruby, if you have fundamentals done, like for example, if you're coming from Java or Python or for example C++, Ruby is again an object-oriented programming language. So you already have the basics set. You just have to understand the syntax, and that should be able to keep you up to the speed learning Ruby. But when you are learning Rails, you need to understand how Rails operate, what MVC is, how convention over configuration works, and there are guides. The study material is available for free. So later on in the slides, I'll pass on the material. Those, if just people go through those whatever portals that I'll be mentioning, if just people go through those portals, they'll be in a stage that they can interview at least for the company. So if you, when I'm saying early candidates, so if you are working on a bootstrap project, so for example, if you're working on a project on a side hand, and then you are bringing that experience to the interviewer, saying that, okay, I am coming right out of college, but I have built these 2-3 projects. So then you still have the understanding. Then they don't have to teach you from scratch. So that can still be very beneficial, and it can be self-taught.
Yeah. I think those were the questions that were asked. And I think we can start with the presentation again.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you so much for the questions. Yeah. I'll move to the presentation, not the demos thing. So for that, what we can do here is, let me open Sublime Editor. Yeah, this is a sample application that I've created. I'll just open the documentation that I've kept here. Yeah. So to start with building this application, let's go on the terminal and let's see. So firstly, the basic thing is you have to install different things. Like, for example, you need to have Ruby running on your machine. You need to have Rails running on your machine. There should be a database running on your machine. For example, Postgres, MySQL, MongoDB, SQLite, any of the database of your choice, it should be running on your machine. So I have those things already installed because I thought it will be a little time consuming if I install it on the screen share. So I'll just show you that I have all the things already installed. So I've got Ruby 3.0.3 running. I've got Rails 7 running, and then I've got SQLite also present. So I'll be creating a very simple application, and we can call it a article. So it can be a content management system kind of application. So it will be a CRUD application. So for example, if we name it articles, so you can create an article when this application would be up. You can create an article, you can make changes to the article, and you can delete the article. That would be the agenda behind the creating this application. And the idea is I would want to show you the experience of how the application looks like, what sort of folders that gets created, what is the significance and what is the meaning of those folders, and then how easy it is to bootstrap an application. So let's see. So firstly, we checked all the versions that were there. Now we'll just create the application and we'll call it article. So the command is pretty simple. Rails new article. You have to. Oh, sorry, I'm in a wrong folder. I'll just, for sanity, I'll be coming in the Recro sessions. There are Ayush and Block, 2 applications already present. I'll create a new application saying article. When you do that, Rails will do a lot of things for you, so you don't have to do it. It will fetch the gems for you. It will create the boilerplate code for different things. I'll show you once the application is up. Yeah, so the application is created. We are going to this application. We have created this article application, right? So there are these folders that got created: app, bin, config. So all these folders got created. We'll start talking about first thing. So first is this, the most important thing here is gem file. So gem file tells you what sort of dependencies or what sort of gems do you want to use in this application. So when you create a new application, it comes up with all these gems. So for example, Rails, they've defined that, okay, this application will use Ruby 3.0.3. This application would use Rails 7.0.4. So you have to define a specific version of gem that you want to use here. And later you can see different environments also. So for example, if you want to implement a test framework, you want to do it only for the test, under the test environment. If you want to do something, some kind of debugging, those kind of gems you can bring in under the development environment. So that's the flexibility that gem file gives you. Apart from that, the MVC that I mentioned initially, that it follows a MVC pattern. under the application folder, you can see the models, views, and controllers here. So these are the main things which drives your application. And like once this is the boilerplate application that is created. So we'll go here, we'll go to that application, and as the application is created, we can actually bootstrap the server. So we don't have to do anything extra. This is it. Our application is up and running. Currently, it does not have anything related to article, but let's see. We'll try to add that also in some time. So yeah, you can see there's this call made. Get call is coming. It is coming and it is trying to. It is written 200 status code. So saying it is okay. So this is the default page that Rails give you when you start a new application with Rails. Now what we'll do here. So we have seen that application on the browser. Now what we'll do this. What is the scaffold? I mentioned you that initially while I was giving you the theory about the Rails application. With the scaffold, Rails will create the boilerplate code for you. So what we are here doing is Rails generates scaffolds, and we are telling that create an article for us. It should have 3 attributes. So consider it as a database table. So we'll be creating an article name table, and it will have 3 attributes: name, title, and content. We can use this command here. We'll shut down the server. Now if we'll try to access it, it won't work because the server is down. We'll go here. We'll try to generate the scaffold. Okay. Name article is either already used in the application or reserved by. Okay, take no problem. We'll use blog only. Yeah. So these sort of application, these sort of files are already created with scaffold. So you can see model got created. This model will talk to the database. A controller got created. This is basically the API layer. So all the API calls that we'll be making from the browser, these will come here to the controller. And then we have created multiple views. So these are templates. We call it templates in Rails. So these are html.erb files. And that's it. Like these are the important things. Later on, it created some test files also. So if you have to do some unit testing or integration testing, you can utilize these files. So as the application, this boilerplate code is created, you can see under the DB, there is this migration file created, create blog. So what it tells you that, okay, I've written the code, but we actually have to go to the server, to the database. For example, in this case, it is SQLite. So it will go to the database and create that table for us. So we have to run that migration for it. So the command for that is Rails db migrate. When you run that, it says that, okay, the migration is completed. And now if we again bootstrap the application, bootstrap the server, it started the server. We'll hit it again. Okay, the server is up. And if we go to the routes file, you can see this resource is created. Its name is posts. Correct. So I typed the wrong thing there. So we are under article, and this is not the correct routes file. I think we have to check under the config and routes. So we can see these blogs, right? So whenever we go here, so this is the index call that we are making to the blog section. So from here, we can actually create a new blog. So say we can say Recro blog 1. We'll copy the same title and content, and this is it. So you can see in the server, we'll clear the server. When we do this, it created it made a post call. It passed on all the parameters that were there, and it returned at 302. And later it rendered the index page. So you can see the blog that we have created currently. We can go back to, we can try to create another blog. We'll call it Recro blog 2. Yeah. So we have got 2 blogs that were created. We can make edits to these blogs. We can show these blogs. Here we can edit it. So even the updates call are possible. So this is the this is what we can do. So this is all is happening, and this as you can see that this can happen very easily. We have just used scaffold, and it has written HTML for us. all the under app, if you go, you'll go under views, and you can see that for blogs, they've written so many HTML. Rails has written all these HTML for you. Similarly, under controller, if you come under blogs controller, you can see all these actions like create, show, index. All these code is written already for you. So this boilerplate code comes by default. So for example, when we create like in the college, when in the 4th year, when we have to create finally a project, Rails could be a very good thing, a good tool that could be used there, like because it can come in handy and very easily you can create applications with it. Yeah, that's about the demo. I had only this thing to mention about how easily can you make it. I'll move to the, let me share my screen back. These were the references that I've used. So if you're interested, I can pass on the presentation slide and you can go through all these references. Very important thing is going through Rails guide. So I'll mention it in the next session also, next slide also. So this is the study material. So for example, if anyone is starting with Ruby or Rails, as Hafsa already asked me, like after my theory session. So RubyMonk is a site that I would suggest or recommend. If you have to learn Ruby, go to RubyMonk. There are a few courses mentioned, such as Primer, Ascent. Start going through the basic courses. So you'll be, you'll understand and learn Ruby very easily through that. And to understand Rails and to learn Rails, these are the two things I would recommend. Rails guides, it's the official guides. So whenever you are stuck, just open Rails guide and try to find your problem and try to solve it there. It's pretty well documented, and you should be able to find all the problems and answers for that there. And Railscast is a pretty mature, I would say, portal where they've created a very good content for learning Rails. So for example, you have to create an authentication service, or if you have to build a notification service, how you can do it with Rails, you can find those kind of videos at Railscast, and that should help you learn and build the applications for yourself. Yeah, that's it for me. I think we are in time, and yeah.
Well, Ayush, we have 2 more questions.
Okay.
So I think it was given when the demo was presented or something. So one of them is, how does a router work in Rails?
Okay, sure. I can go back to the code maybe to explain that. So whenever a request comes, we'll go to the routes are we. Yeah, so whenever a request comes, so we have a Puma server running. So it's an application server. When a request comes through rake routes, it comes to this file. It comes to this routes file and this resources. So you might see that it's a bit tricky. So when you use resource and when you write resources and then posts, it creates multiple routes for you. So to simplify it for you, I'll just open the Rails guide only. Because that way you'll be, whoever asked, it will be very easy for that person to understand. Yeah, so when you write resources and then this case, so in our case, we were writing resources and post. So similarly, if you write resources photos, it creates these many routes for you. All the get, post, for the creation, for the show call, index call, they've created this. For creation call, they've created this. So when you write resources post, it creates you the 7 routes were created. After, like from here, like if you can see this, photos and index. So it will go to photos controller and index section. When a request comes for /photos, it will go to photos controller and index section. So similarly, in our case, it will go to this index section. And once it comes to this index section, it will try to find the similar named view. So under blogs, it will find index.html.erb, and it will use this HTML to print it on the browser. So this would be the complete cycle of the route.
So we have one more last question, Ayush. So that is, what is the use of the super function in Ruby and Rails?
What is the use of super function?
Super function, yeah.
Okay. So when you've got different classes, so if it is an object-oriented programming language, so you've got classes and you can use inheritance. So when you want to use a method from its parent, you use super. So for example, I can write it also, but I will just mention it here. So if the parent class name is vehicle and the child class name is car, so car is a child of vehicle. If car has a method implemented named color, and if its parent also has that method implemented named color, and under the child's method, if we write super, it will call the parent's method and to fetch the result. So that's how super is used to actually use the parent's method.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ayush, and I hope the questions were answered. And I think we can stop the presentation and we can conclude the session.
Sure.
Yeah. So, okay, that was the last question, and that brings us to the end of this wonderful session. And I would like to thank each one of you for joining us, and thank you for taking out time on your weekend for learning. And well, that shows your dedication towards learning, and we are very happy to have our audience who are really inclined towards learning and growing. Right, and hope you learned something new from this session today, and we will look forward for your post on LinkedIn and with your key learnings and takeaways. Do not forget to tag Ayush and Recro and me and on your post, and we'd be more than happy to look at your learnings and key takeaways from the session. Also, thank you so much, Ayush, for joining us. It was awesome having you. Thank you for taking out time from your hectic schedule and preparing the whole presentation, and the story of explaining the Ruby on Rails from your love story was like really epic. And thank you so much. I hope the audience enjoyed it. And I think making learning a little fun is something that engages people, and that's a really good initiative from your side.
Glad you liked it, Hafsa. Thank you.
Yeah. And before we end the session, I have few announcements to make. We have created a community for developers on Rebase called Recro Tech Circle. So if you're a developer of 1 to 2 years of experience, you can unleash your potential and you can get connected with experts. You can learn, grow, and also develop and contribute with fellow people on open source projects. So the Discord channel name is Rebase, and the link would be given in the chat of the Zoom. And for the people who are watching us live on LinkedIn, you can just go ahead and we have a lot of posts around the Rebase community. So you can go ahead and you can join the community, and we'll be more than happy to have you in our community. So yeah. We made a LinkedIn post about today's session. Do comment your learnings in this post, and we would love to see your learnings. And if you want any advanced topic on this particular session, let's say on Rails or anything advanced on Ruby, do comment and notify us, and would be more than happy to have Ayush again for an advanced level session again. And for more questions, you can follow and connect Ayush on his LinkedIn. He is also a creator, and he talks about a lot of stuff. So I think he kind of mentioned his LinkedIn profile, but I'm going to drop the LinkedIn handle again in the chat. So go there, quickly follow him. And if you're having any doubts around anything of such around the presentation today or anything as such that you're facing as a challenge, he'd be more than happy to help you. If you're exploring career opportunities, Recro is hiring passionate developers. So do check out the current openings at Recro at recro.io/careers. And if you or your friend or your colleague is looking out for openings, we'll be more than happy to place you in the A-grade startups of the country. Okay, so to stay updated for such events, follow us on social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. And the recording of the session will be edited and would be posted on YouTube. But till then, if you want to share it with someone you know, we are having a recording of this live event. So you can go ahead and share it and maybe rewatch it and revisit it and relearn it. And the presentation will also be in the description once we post the edited version of this webinar. So I think we'll take it from the Ayush and we'll post it in the description of the YouTube. So yeah, that's all for the session, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope to see you in the next session. Stay safe, take care, and thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ayush. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.